Have you ever had that incredibly frustrating, like almost universally maddening experience of just being completely misread by the world?
Oh, absolutely. Like, constantly.
Right. I mean, I'm talking about those moments where you walk into a room or enter a conversation and the person across from you just entirely misses who you are.
Yeah, they misinterpret your energy,
Yeah.
or they expect a totally different personality from it.
Exactly. Maybe they even, subconsciously treat you as the wrong gender, and your immediate, entirely natural response is to think like, what on earth is wrong with their radar?
Which is a completely valid question to ask in that moment.
It really is. Well, welcome back, learner. Whether you're here today to prep for a clinical discussion, catching up on the latest somatic psychology, or you're just wildly curious about the hidden languages of the human mind and body, this deep dive is totally custom tailored for you.
It really is, because today we're exploring a completely different explanation for why that misreading actually happens.
Yeah, what if instead of the outside world having a broken antenna, your own body is secretly broadcasting this, like, powerful, invisible static just to protect you?
It's a massive paradigm shift, honestly.
Yeah.
It requires us to stop looking outward at the people who misunderstand us and start looking deeply inward at the subconscious mechanics of how our bodies create this invisible armor.
We are unpacking the concept of root reversal, right? And reclaiming the subconscious feminine truth.
Exactly. And doing so reveals some truly fascinating, slightly heartbreaking, but ultimately incredibly hopeful truths about human survival.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the foundation, which involves a very specific kind of psychological wound.
Right. And it's important to clarify, we aren't talking about a singular catastrophic event you can just circle on a calendar.
No, not at all. We are talking about something that forms in the subtle architecture of how we relate to ourselves, often before we even possess the vocabulary to describe it.
The lack of language is actually the defining feature of this wound. We are looking at an exceptionally deep pre-verbal trauma response.
Wow, pre-verbal. So it's happening before we can even rationalize it.
Exactly. It functions as self-annihilation dressed up as self-protection.
Self-annihilation dressed as self-protection. That is a heavy concept. Can you break that down?
Sure. So imagine a young girl who, through a series of environmental cues, maybe it's harsh criticism, neglect, or subtle threats, learns way below the threshold of conscious thought that being her actual embodied feminine self is fundamentally dangerous.
Okay, so the environment is sending a signal that it's not safe to be her.
Right. And her brilliant, survival-oriented brain has a problem to solve. It has to figure out, how do I keep this person alive and safe?
And what does it do?
The subconscious decides the most efficient strategy is to just preemptively erase the target. It builds a fortress to obscure the feminine self so it simply cannot be harmed.
It's essentially neutralizing a threat by becoming invisible to it.
Precisely.
But it does this by physically altering the body's broadcast, right? Like it's not just a mood you're in.
No, it changes your physical posture, the resonance and pitch of your vocal tone, the way you hold or break eye contact, even your overall energetic signature in a room.
It's like an incredibly advanced radio system that deliberately broadcasts this loud, aggressive static over a beautiful song purely to ensure nobody tries to steal the radio.
I love that analogy. That's exactly it.
And it is not a conscious performance of masculinity, but a survivalist adaptation. So when people misread this person, they aren't actually hallucinating, are they?
No, they aren't. They are receiving the heavy iron armor instead of the woman standing inside of it. They're reading the static.
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of how the subconscious mind operates over time. Because the nervous system doesn't own a calendar.
It really doesn't.
Yeah.
It does not possess the cognitive ability to look around a comfortable room today and rationally deduce, it's 2026. The people who originally made me feel unsafe are gone. I can turn off the static now.
Right. It doesn't logic its way out of it.
Not at all. It responds exclusively to patterns. If being seen as female once produced profound emotional or physical pain, the subconscious hardwires an association.
Being seen equals pain.
Exactly. And it continues to preemptively obscure that signal decades later because it truly believes it is actively keeping you alive.
Wow. So it's an autonomic response.
Yes, operating on the exact same neural pathways as pulling your hand away from a hot stove. The stove, in this case, just happens to be the gaze of other people.
Which is an absolute masterclass in survival. I mean, you have to respect the biology of it.
You really do.
But it's utterly devastating for human connection. And that leads to a huge question.
Yeah.
If this protective static was installed in the past without our conscious permission, how on earth is it maintained in the present day? Because it must take massive amounts of energy to run that static all the time.
Oh, it's exhausting. The key seems to lie in a conscious layer of this mechanism known as self-denial.
Self-denial.
Okay. Yeah, self-denial is the engine keeping the static running. And it is incredibly insidious because it usually disguises itself as self-improvement.
Oh, wow. Disguised as self-improvement. How does that work?
Well, it manifests as deferring your true identity to a future conditional.
Ah,
It's that persistent internal dialogue saying, I'll really let myself be seen, I'll be fully feminine when I lose 10 pounds. Or when my voice doesn't sound so harsh. Or when I finally get a different job.
oh, it's the exhausting trap of not yet. I'll be me, but not yet.
Exactly. But since we established that the subconscious doesn't process linear time, it literally cannot comprehend the yet part of that sentence.
It just hears the not.
Yes. When you tell yourself, I am not yet ready to be received as my true self, the subconscious encodes the signal simply as not my true self.
And then it continuously adjusts your physical broadcast to match that negative command.
Precisely. And this isn't just happening in big dramatic moments either.
Right. The sources mention this is happening through what are called self-mantras, which aren't necessarily words, but incredibly fast somatic markers.
Yes. They are feelings with immense momentum. Think about a completely ordinary scenario, like ordering a coffee or walking into a morning meeting.
Okay, pretty mundane stuff.
Right. And someone makes direct eye contact with you. A microsecond before you even register their face, your nervous system runs a self-mantra.
Like a physical reaction.
Exactly. You feel a slight involuntary contraction at your solar plexus. Your shoulders brace a fraction of an inch. You preemptively flatten your vocal cords right before you say hello.
Wow. Just thinking about the caloric and emotional toll of that is exhausting.
It's just a huge drain on your system.
You are executing a rigorous, invisible routine of self-correction before any external correction even arrives. And you're doing it hundreds, maybe thousands of times a day, completely on autopilot.
Yes, your nervous system is just running this loop, confirming its own distorted signal over and over again.
That's wild.
And because it happens entirely beneath the threshold of conscious thought, it just feels like your baseline reality. You
Yeah.
don't think you're wearing armor.
You think you are the armor.
Exactly. You think that's just who you are. And this misunderstanding is precisely why the modern conscious solutions we typically throw at this kind of trauma fall completely flat.
Wait, I have to challenge this a bit. Because every modern self-help guru, every empowerment retreat tells us to fake it till you make it.
Oh, I know.
We are told to boldly claim our space, to look in the mirror and shout positive affirmations, to aggressively perform the identity we want. Are you saying that using sheer effort to loudly claim your identity is actually completely useless? Or even harmful?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how the autonomic nervous system functions, yes, that approach frequently backfires.
Really? Why is that?
Because trying to perform your identity more effortfully or monitoring your behavior more vigilantly to ensure you are doing it right actually feeds the exact same anxious surveillance mechanism that created the armor in the first place.
Because you are still scanning for threats.
Exactly. You haven't turned off the alarm system.
You've just taken the flat scanner and pointed it entirely at yourself. You're policing your own performance.
You are. And you cannot argue a nervous system out of a trauma response. Affirmations that sit on top of terror simply do not register.
So the deeper subconscious survival signal will always override a surface-level cognitive instruction.
Always. If you look in the mirror and loudly declare, I am perfectly safe and fully seen, but your heart rate is elevated, your breathing is shallow, and your muscles are tense.
Your subconscious registers your affirmation as a dangerous lie.
Exactly. It thinks, why are we shouting if we are supposedly safe?
That makes total sense.
It will not release a protective pattern until it is genuinely convinced the protection is unnecessary. It learns through the repetition of felt, bodily experience, never through logical debate.
So what does this all mean for someone trapped in this cycle? If willpower just feeds the panic and forced affirmations just bounce off the armor, what is the actual mechanism for change?
This is where we arrive at the core concept of today's deep dive, which is root reversal.
Root reversal.
Yeah.
And this requires completely abandoning those top layers, right? The thoughts, the forced behaviors, the good intentions.
Yes, all of it. You have to think all the way down to the somatic, physiological layer where the original trauma encoding actually lives.
And the absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for root reversal is nervous system regulation.
It really is. If your nervous system is dysregulated, like if you are trapped in fight, flight, or freeze,
Uh-huh.
you cannot receive new encoding,
Because a brain in survival mode automatically defaults to the oldest, most heavily reinforced pathway available.
which is the static. So the clinical work is to help the body reach a state of ventral vagal safety.
For those who might not be familiar with that term, ventral vagal safety isn't just a psychological concept, right? It's a highly specific physiological state.
It is entirely physical.
It's like that deep sigh of relief. It's when your jaw unclenches, your digestion turns back on, and your heart rate variability smooths out.
Yes, it's the physical state of feeling socially engaged and biologically calm.
Biological calm. I love that.
That physical calm is the literal laboratory where healing happens. Safety is not a luxury or a reward for doing the emotional work.
It is the physical medium through which change travels.
Exactly. You achieve this state through incredibly gentle physical means. Co-regulation is a major one.
Right, like sitting with a trusted friend whose calm nervous system actually helps regulate yours.
Yes, or it's spending time submerged in physical beauty, feeling the literal warmth of sunlight on your skin, or using a heavy blanket, engaging in slow, rhythmic breath work.
And the goal here is almost astonishingly small, which makes it feel incredibly accessible.
It really is.
You aren't trying to feel like this unarmored, radiant version of yourself for a full 24 hours. The goal is to reach that state of ventral vagal safety and feel the private, internal, cellular recognition of existing in your true identity for even just 3 seconds.
3 seconds. That's it.
Imagine sitting alone on a park bench, the sun is on your face, and for 3 continuous seconds, you exist without monitoring yourself.
Without judging your posture, without a readiness to defend or explain your right to be there.
3 seconds of existing without surveillance is the seed of profound neurological change.
It is. This highlights a clinical truth that I find deeply comforting. This work is not about dramatic breakthroughs. It is radically patient.
Because in those 3 seconds, a brand new neural pathway is being written.
Yes, the body is having a physical experience where the true self is present and absolutely no harm occurred.
And over time, with enough repetition of those tiny felt experiences, the new encoding accumulates weight. The nervous system starts to trust it.
And the old, heavy armor slowly loses its neurological authority.
It's profoundly beautiful that safety, not struggle, is the engine of change. But let's look at the ripple effect of this.
Okay, let's do that.
As the way this person interacts with the outside world. You know, the very world that was previously misreading them at the beginning of our deep dive.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because there is a fascinating paradox regarding external validation.
The paradox lies in where you direct your energy, doesn't it?
It does. Fighting the external misreading directly, like getting defensive, over-explaining your identity to strangers, demanding that a cashier or a colleague see you correctly, that only addresses the symptom.
Because remember, the external misreading is actually an accurate output of your internal distortion. People are subconsciously reading the static.
Exactly. But as your internal shifts through those 3-second windows of safety, your subconscious naturally begins to broadcast an unobscured signal.
Oh, so it happens without you forcing it.
Completely naturally. Your vocal cords relax and lower in pitch without you trying. Your energetic presence expands.
Your eye contact softens from like a defensive stare to a receptive gaze.
Yes. And perception naturally follows suit because people instinctively respond to the biological signal they are actually receiving.
But you know, we also can't pretend that other people don't matter entirely. While fighting strangers is useless, finding safe environments where you are seen accurately by trusted people is vital.
Oh, absolutely. It's not vanity to want to be seen correctly.
Right. Receiving accurate reflection from someone you trust without having to qualify or explain yourself acts as literal nervous system medicine.
It is essential medicine. When a trusted person meets you in your actual identity without hesitation, it sends a powerful corroborating signal to your nervous system.
It says, this is safe, this is real, we are allowed to exist here.
Exactly. It is the external environmental input that dramatically accelerates the internal root reversal work.
This perfectly tees up a concept that completely reframes the whole issue, the concept of gender inversion.
Yes, and we need to clarify this term.
Right. This term isn't being used to pathologize anyone's identity at all. It's used as a mechanical metaphor to understand the biology of what's happening.
Exactly. Think of a wire meant to transmit the signal, here I am, but because of early trauma, that wire got spliced into the emergency alarm system that transmits, hide me.
Oh, wow. So the signal you are broadcasting isn't a broken signal. It's a beautifully functioning survival instinct.
It is. It's just running in the wrong direction.
It has reversed polarity because at a critical moment in your life, protection became vastly more urgent than presence.
I love the electrical metaphor because it really clarifies the solution. You are not trying to rip out the wiring.
And you aren't trying to slap a new artificial signal on top of the old one either?
No. You're tracing that original survival signal back to its source, back to the moment you had to hide to survive, and you're gently reversing the polarity.
You are using safety to persuade the nervous system to allow presence to become the primary function again, retiring protection to a backup system where it belongs.
Which fundamentally changes the narrative of healing, doesn't it?
It totally does. We aren't trying to build a new, perfect, fully realized self from scratch. We are excavating.
Yes, this is a process of reclamation.
The true self was always there, fully intact. It just went deep underground to survive a brutal winter.
That distinction is the difference between lifelong exhaustion and actual freedom.
Because what we often mistake for our personality, the rigidity, the hypervigilance, the sarcastic deflection, the specific ways we shrink to fit a room.
That's frequently just a survival structure built on top of a habit.
And survival structures feel incredibly solid, like concrete, but they are not your true identity.
No, they were never load-bearing walls in the architecture of who you are.
That is such a relieving thought. Because they are just adaptations, they can be safely dismantled from the inside out once they are no longer needed.
And you know you are making real progress when you hit what is described as the tipping point.
Right. And this isn't a magical moment where you are completely cured and never feel insecure again, is it?
No, not at all. The tipping point is the moment when the old armor, the static, begins to feel less like a cozy, necessary shelter and more like a heavy, suffocating weight.
Your body starts to spontaneously release the armor, not because your conscious mind ordered it to with willpower, but because your biology has finally been persuaded that it is safe to take it off.
This raises an important question, though, about the reality of the healing process. What happens on the days when that biological persuasion wavers?
Because human healing never follows a neat, linear schedule.
Never. There will absolutely be bad days when the old static violently reasserts itself. You'll walk into a room, feel a wave of insecurity, and suddenly your voice flattens out.
Your stomach ties in knots, and that heavy armor slams right back into place.
And the most important thing to understand about those days is that it is absolutely not a regression.
You haven't lost all your progress.
You haven't. It is simply the nervous system running an old, deeply grooved subroutine one more time before it permanently updates the operating system.
It's an echo of a ghost.
Exactly. The real danger on those days isn't the armor returning. The danger is falling back into self-judgment.
Because if you get angry at yourself for having a trauma response, you are generating the exact frequency of internal danger that installed the original wound in the first place.
You are literally proving to your subconscious that it was right to be afraid.
So the only effective response is what the source calls witnessing, which sounds simple but is incredibly difficult in practice.
It is so difficult.
Witnessing means you observe the pattern returning with profound curiosity and total emotional neutrality. You step back internally and say, there's the old broadcast.
My nervous system is doing its protective thing. But that static is not me. I am the consciousness watching it happen.
You deliberately decouple your identity from the survival mechanism. You refuse to fuse with the armor.
By maintaining that neutral observation, you return to the felt sense of what is actually true, even if you can only hold it for another 3 seconds.
What is actually true is the cellular subconscious reality of the vibrant self that survived the winter.
Yes. The work is simply allowing that true signal to travel unobstructed from the inside out, trusting that the world will eventually tune in to the right frequency.
It's a breathtakingly compassionate way to understand the mind-body connection.
It really is.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's pull all these threads together for you. We've journeyed from understanding the mechanics of how a brilliant nervous system broadcasts invisible, static, and physical armor to survive early emotional danger.
And we've seen exactly why fighting that armor with sheer willpower or forced hollow affirmations fails.
Right, because it lacks the one essential nutrient the body demands, which is genuine physiological safety.
And we've uncovered the beautiful truth that healing isn't a construction project. It is an unearthing.
It is a slow, patient reclamation of a self that was always fully intact, just waiting for the internal coast to be clear.
Whether you are applying these mechanics to your own somatic healing journey, trying to hold space for a loved one whose armor is thick, or just marveling at the hidden languages of human survival, the mechanics of root reversal offer a path forward rooted entirely in grace.
It replaces a cycle of blame, both blaming ourselves for our perceived flaws and blaming the world for misreading us, with a deep clinical respect for the nervous system's immense capacity to protect us.
And more importantly, its equal capacity to heal us when we finally provide it with genuine safety.
So, learner, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your week, one that brings us right back to that incredibly advanced radio system we talked about at the very beginning.
Hmm.
If so much of what you currently consider your fixed personality, your rigidities, your anxieties, your defensive habits, is actually just a brilliant survival structure, a heavy layer of static built by your nervous system long ago to keep you safe, who might you become when you finally convince your body that the war is over?